Okay, we'll just give it till 5:03, and then we'll just give it one more minute. We'll get started. Okay, thank you for joining us for the discussion today. We're going to go through, bringing security into a cloud native world. Very fortunate to have, Fim from Palo Alto here. We have our own Anthony Dack from CDW Canada to kind of walk us through the specifics around security and Prisma Cloud. I'm going to start and discuss a little bit around CDW Canada, ourselves and who we are. Go through a little bit of application modernization. We have a platform as a service that we're developing alongside of VMware and Palo Alto and some of their Prisma Cloud offerings for containers and application modernization. So we'll kind of go through that, and then hand it over to Anthony and Fim, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about Palo Alto and Prisma Cloud and what's offered there, and then a bit of a demo and kind of walk through the product and talk about some of the key highlights that we think are relevant. So, so I'm not going to go through these slides. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. It's just key to understand CDW in the marketplace. We help a lot of customers solve difficult challenges. We help our customers drive business value. So, located across all of Canada. Again, reach out to your account managers. We have a pre-sales solutions architect in security, in data center, in the public cloud, in ServiceNow and digital transformation. So, reach out to your account managers, and we can get people to talk to you, discuss what your business goals and objectives or challenges are, and then discuss ways to resolve those. A little bit about CDW and VMware and kind of where we line up, in Canada. We're a principal partner. Ooh, it is automatically moving on. We're a principal partner. We have 7 VMware competencies and 4 MSC badges, specializing in data center virtualization, network virtualization, VMware Cloud. And then we'll be able to view the recording and the content after the fact. Where we focus with VMware is really around some of the core services with infrastructure and virtualization, but we also help with. Don't know why it's auto advancing. We also help with. Second. Yeah, I have no idea why it's auto advancing. VMC and AWS is another area we're helping with customers with. Some of their hyperconverged, some of their SD-WAN solutions, and more specifically to this topic, application modernization and VMware Tanzu and the different components that make up that environment. CDW and Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks, #1 partner in Canada by revenue for the last 4 years. We have great people that are part of our team, like Anthony, like the other security solutions architects that work well with Palo Alto and really help bring those solutions to life for our customers. Canadian Partner of the Year last 4 years, and one of the only local authorized Canadian training partner. And we're actually lucky to have Anthony on the call today because he does a lot of training for our customers, and it's tough sometimes to get his time. So it's great to have that, and that's part of our investment in Palo Alto and really having that strong partnership. And CDW focuses on delivering end-to-end security for our customers. And so we understand that security is a part of everything you do, whether it's in the network, whether it's the applications, whether it's the application specific firewalls. It really doesn't matter. Security is a way of how we're doing things, helping our customers tie that deeper into, some of their development programs and how they are delivering applications and services for their customers is key. The And then I'll kind of dig into application modernization. So one of the concepts to understand about why application modernization is important is really around the idea of digitally distraught versus digitally determined organizations. And so, whether you're a customer or you're dealing with customers, um, where people are having success in their hybrid cloud deployments and their hybrid cloud environments is where they are really able to invest in their people, invest in their processes, and focus on developing those so that you are really maturing the way that you're doing things. You're taking data from new sources and you're creating insights out of that, and then you're focused on taking those insights and really bringing them into the business to provide value. And so one of the things we've done recently is a cloud report in participation with IDC that they focused on leadership in Canada and what leaders in Canada and IT were saying, and out of that, there are organizations that are focused on cost cutting and implementing technologies, and the challenge is the organizations that are focused in that way aren't necessarily getting the benefits from their hybrid cloud and the public cloud investments that they're making. You contrast that to digitally determined organizations that are really focusing in on this application modernization and containers and some of these transformative activities where they're investing in training people and making sure that they're bringing the skill sets of their teams up, where they're focused on agile project methodology and DevOps as a way to deliver value to their customers, both internal and external, faster. Those are really the organizations that are really doing well, leveraging their hybrid cloud, leveraging public cloud services, and leveraging those modern workloads that are based off of containers and cloud native services. And so when we look at, well, why is application modernization important, and then after that, why do we need to secure it, and why are we preparing for it? And putting out all this infrastructure and making these processes and creating these plans. Well, fundamentally, it ties into how we can provide value to the business faster, and how we can really provide solutions and services to our customers at a faster rate, and then solve those challenges and provide that user experience, that customer experience that you really want. So this is a lot of why we're focusing on application modernization. And with that, it's good to understand that application modernization means different things to different people. Everybody's looking at it from a different perspective, and so whether that is, you're focused on delivering the services faster for your customers, or whether you're really tied up with, well, it changes the way that we develop infrastructure and the way we deploy resources for our application developers and service owners to consume. It changes the way that things are being deployed, aligning with CI/CD pipelines and deploying via microservices. And so, everybody's looking at the elephant from a different angle. Everybody is trying to, use the skills that they have, the tools that they have that are available, and they're really trying to make sure that they're taking care of their part of this, but they may be focused on just one individual aspect of the elephant. And so it's important to, just as we understand that everybody's sort of looking at this as a different thing. And then again, what about security in this? And so as we're looking at changing the way that we are deploying services and applications, and the way that we are wanting to deliver at an accelerated rate, and we're using different pockets of resources and infrastructure, sometimes in the public cloud, sometimes in our data center still. Security is key to all of that, and new security tools, new ways of approaching security. And that's again where we want to come in and help our customers, is have some of those architectural conversations and discuss it ahead of time. Don't try to treat security as something that you do after the fact. It really needs to be part of how we approach, the entire process. So again, when we look at this, it's about finding that common ground, and that enterprise platform, the services that IT, in a lot of ways owns and curates, is that commingling of all of these ideas together. And so from a developer's perspective, that's the way they want to deploy, and the process they want to do that via a CI/CD pipeline, however that is implemented within your organization, because they can be done in different ways and be very successful. But tying in with APIs and being able to leverage automation code, being able to leverage containers, and it's about in your role having provided to you what you need to be successful. From a security perspective, application firewalls and making sure that we're not just developing quickly, we're securing and we're following, compliancy rules and making sure that we're incorporating those security methodologies and those security appliances and services into the CI/CD pipelines. And so everything sort of starts to commingle in this enterprise platform, and then the operational teams that are working to skill up to continue to take on these additional areas. It's really around the key pillars that I talk about: manageability, portability, and observability, and being able to see what's going on, being able to enable that portability so that the business can operate those workloads and operate those services where it makes the most sense, where they can get the most value. And manageability, being able to stretch tools and services across those, not having to have different tool sets in each of those different areas. And then at the end of the day, it's capacity, and it's having the capacity to operate in an efficient way. And when you look at the value of the public cloud and be able to scale, almost infinitely, at least infinitely as far as most of us consider, growing our pool of resources. It's having that capacity available and being able to do that, on demand as needed. So the reason I had the photo on the right in this picture is, again, if we kind of think back to that elephant, everybody's looking at this common ground in a different way. Everybody has different tools and things that they want to have available, and so to each of those different stakeholders, it can look very different, and the way they want to work with it can be very different. And there's really no right way or wrong way. We just all have different ways that are going to be important for us, so that we're tied in with the right tools, and we're able to focus and be effective at providing the value we're being asked to provide, right? So when we look at this, when we start with sort of the business challenges and the business objectives, and the idea is to increase efficiencies, it's to help drive value, it's to support the DevOps teams that are developing these applications and services for customers in a more effective way. um, we start with those goals and objectives, and then we sort of work our way towards the technologies and solutions and services that can really do that for our customers. And so, when we look at application modernization, really our focus is trying to find a way that we can bring those services, we can make them available for our customers, in a way that's easier to consume, that has enterprise support, that doesn't require completely retooling everybody in IT in order to be able to do those things. And so, um, what we've when we look at that sort of that landscape, I personally and the team here we feel very strongly that VMware Tanzu and what VMware is offering with enterprise support, with all of the different pieces that I'll kind of touch on in the next slide a little bit. There's a mapping, and we're able to draw a line between what the development teams are really trying to accomplish, and then tools and services that have enterprise support that are able to accomplish those goals and provide those services and that flexibility. And then really, again, we have a great relationship with Palo Alto Networks, and they have an increasingly difficult task of providing security around all of these emerging technologies. But we feel they have a great solution that plugs into this, that offers that scalability and offers that serviceability, in a way that our customers can consume, as a cloud service that ties into this, and again can maintain that compliancy, can maintain that security, even though the workloads are fundamentally changing. And so, when we look at this, it's more of a platform as a service, as opposed to sort of best of breed. Although we do feel that Palo Alto and what they offer in their core services and what they offer with Prisma Cloud is best of breed. And we do believe that VMware Tanzu and the services that fall inside of the Tanzu offering are also best of breed. We feel that together, they really do create a secure environment to operate these containerized workloads, in a way that isn't revolutionary, for a lot of your IT teams. So, developers are really trying to engage with the resources they need, through Java frameworks. They need build services and services to track those applications, those containers that they're building. They need to catalog those. They want to leverage, Kubernetes-based containers. They want to be able to use repos and like GitHub to be able to store, those iterations and collaborate. And then they want to be able to leverage, APIs. They want to be able to leverage automation and not make their job more difficult when they are plugging in, key services like Prisma Cloud or like a Harbor. And so, again, part of the part of the struggle, and part of the challenge that's really been put in front of IT is being able to provide an environment, provide the operation in the way that the development teams want to see, but then also again maintain all of that ability to scale and manage and monitor and the visibility and the security and the compliancy around all of that. So, we feel that VMware Tanzu kind of at the middle where those are coming together, and then really Prisma Cloud is and the Palo Alto services is a way to secure that. Helps us solve that at more of as a platform. And then if we sort of break that down, we've got different layers to this. There's the modern infrastructure. Where are we operating those workloads? Where are we building that information out, and how are we um, provisioning? And so again, there's going to be a desire to run containers in your data center. There's going to be a desire to run containers in a hyperscaler or a public cloud, things like VMC and AWS. Those are all options that our different customers are going to want to employ, and sometimes it's going to be multiples of those. And so creating that connectivity across that plane, and really creating the ability to move those workloads around in a holistic way is important. Running and operating those TKG Tanzu Kubernetes grid. Again, we want to make sure that the developers have the fundamental pieces that they need to be successful. So whether that's Kubernetes, whether that's leveraging Spring, it's important that they have the tie-ins, to be successful. One of the big areas, I feel that Tanzu has improved here as it's matured is around observability. And so if we really focus in on the visibility and what's needed to be able to keep an idea, keep. Sorry, my kids are in the background. So, with Tanzu observability and being able to see and have that visibility in there, it's key. You can't really control, you can't protect, you can't monitor and manage where there's ambiguity, or there's magic things happening someplace in the environment. And so really having that visibility is key. And then, from CDW's perspective, it's really helping our customers, architect and prepare for that. It's workload assessments and being able to better understand what do those workloads look like. How can they be, coming up with a game plan to get them into the public cloud, or to operate them on premises, or to prepare for, redesigning them for microservices and containers. And so we like to view ourselves a bit as the glue that's able to help our customers ideate, work with great partners like VMware and Palo Alto to build up these architectures and make sure that they're going to meet our customers' needs at the end of the day. And then again, security is important to everything that we're doing. And so the ability to really draw that boundary and have that visibility from the security platforms and then protect these modern workloads is critical. So I think, when we look at it, we feel that this is an opinionated architecture. Are there other ways to do it? Absolutely, there are other ways to do it. But we feel that the VMware Tanzu, coupled with Palo Alto and the Prisma Cloud offerings, and also coupled with some of the traditional Palo Alto offerings, is very strong, in that we have solutions that are forward thinking, that are not just built for today, but are also built for tomorrow. VMware and Palo Alto Networks have both invested heavily in these areas, and they're continuing to invest in them. So again, as we move forward, we feel very confident that this platform will help drive value for our customers. So I think that's roughly, wanted to talk a bit about application modernization, because as we talk about securing what that cloud optimized and that new cloud environment looks like, this is core to it. And so making sure that our customers are investing in tools and technologies that have that flexibility and can work forward and provide value as they go through this application modernization process, it's critical. So Cassandra, I can't really see the chat. I don't know if there were any questions that came up. We can, definitely, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Even if you don't think of anything until later, just go ahead and drop it in there, and we'll revisit it at the end. But Cassandra, did anything else come up in chat for anybody else can see?
We don't have any questions in the chat right now.
Okay, no problem. And I see Mark was able to join. Mark, appreciate you joining the call. Yeah, and again, Mark is with VMware. He's a great Tanzu resource, and so if you have any questions specifically around any of the various components within VMware Tanzu, and again, reach out to your account managers. We love to get engaged. We have great pre-sales resources that will help you talk about what some of those challenges are, talk about what you're doing and where you're trying to get to, and help really categorize and define what some of those business objectives are, and then yeah, we can work towards solutions and products and things that can help you achieve that. But it all starts with what your challenges and what your goals and objectives are. So definitely work through that, and yeah. So, Anthony, wanted to bring up your content, and maybe if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. I don't think I didn't really cover it. It's on the slide there, but it'd be great to have that. Actually, Cassandra, I'll keep control of the deck for just a moment longer, if that's okay. One moment. Go.
Sure thing, KJ. Yeah, so actually, I mean, if you wanted to bring up my first slide that I have, my intro kind of leads into this slide that I'd like to talk about. So yeah, my name's Anthony Dack. I'm a security solutions architect here at CDW. I focus on anything from network security through to endpoint security through to cloud security as well. Cloud security is obviously where my heart lies at the moment. But I mean, basically, a bit of a background on me is I started my career, I was lucky enough to start my career as a network and security engineer. So for the first couple of years, I was doing firewall administration, typical adds, moves, and changes, working with my developers to bring new services online, making DNS changes and things like that. And that was obviously back then following a very monolithic architecture. So as KJ was mentioning before, the way that applications used to be developed was a single server would be spun up and applications would be installed on that server, and it would be a very slow and tedious process. I was obviously involved in that process in that security engineers would be there to make sure that the servers were hardened, make sure that they were secured, make sure that rules were burnt within the firewalls to allow the servers to be able to talk to external services, etc. Now, oftentimes that could be a bit of a blocker in that change management was involved, and large sort of servers themselves or environments that were stood up would just take time. So, that was obviously a system that worked at the time purely because of the way that consumers were consuming apps and just things were moving along. However, if we flash forward to sort of today's era, we're noticing that our users are consuming applications and services in a very different way. And the good analogy I used for this was, take us back a year to a year and a half ago. We were obviously, forced to be in a totally different environment, like I'm sitting in right now. I'm sitting in my home, and I have my webcam on, and I'm engaging with a number of different people around. That's obviously a different experience to what we had done, before that previously. Now, an interesting piece that came out of this was by having my webcam on, anyone could see what was within my house and behind me, and you'd see a whole bunch of distracting things kind of running around. And at the same time, we also all kind of discovered that we could change our backgrounds or blur our backgrounds or put kind of interesting pictures up behind us. And that created this kind of amusing couple of weeks where we would all be doing this different things with the backgrounds of our videos. But it also created a little bit of an arms race between the vendors that were providing video conferencing solutions, in that if they didn't have the current features in place, some of their users might be encouraged to use a different platform, and they might be starting to have sort of issues with the platform that they're using. So, for right or for wrong, the developers at those companies pushed those changes out as fast as they could, which kind of highlights the reason why app modernization and containerization of your services is starting to occur and has been occurring for the last couple of years. Is users are consuming applications quickly. They're quite fickle when it comes to what they use. An application that I use today may not be the application that I'd like to use tomorrow. So developers are under a lot of pressure to push out updates as fast as they can. In our traditional monolithic architectures, pushing out an update to that sometimes would require an entire rebuild of the server, which could take days. Especially me on the security side, I'm trying to ensure that things that are being spun up in my production environments are not insecure or running old versions of code or have problems like that. So so within that space now, we're seeing the need to kind of segment out our application updates to make it so that we can just update the tiny little piece of our major application to make our lives easier and to make sure our users continue using our application as a whole. And that's kind of one of the driving factors behind containerization and microservices, microsegmentation, is that the need to kind of shrink down the surface of things that I'm touching as a developer and be able to push changes faster to be able to get the go to market as quick as we can. That creates an interesting problem for a security engineer, in that looking at the containerization as opposed to looking at the server as a whole, I'm now stuck with trying to understand how containers work and look at this kind of area as a whole. Now, I, as a security administrator myself personally, is I found it very interesting over the last couple of years to try and find on-ramps for people that have traditional security backgrounds like I do in terms of firewall administration, how we understand life in a developer-centric world, and how code is written and how apps are deployed within containers. And that's what kind of leads me to this slide here, is within the cloud native space, and then also within our microservices, there is a host of problems that can exist because these environments are basically just larger copies of larger environments, just in a sort of smaller subset. And listing off along here there's a number of problems that you can see, or challenges that you can see on these slides that have already been solved in our traditional networks. So if we're looking at threat detection, or if we're looking at compliance standards, a lot of these things have existed in traditional and then now exist within cloud, and then also within modern application environments too. And that's where I find that particularly interesting, is trying to find a technical control to match a process that we've solved sort of in a traditional environment. That's sort of a very interesting piece for security engineers to tackle these days. And I feel like, similar to the Tanzu product itself, it becomes almost like an on-ramp for our infrastructure engineers or our security engineers to be able to fall back on knowledge that they're already kind of maintaining. They've already learned what, as an example, microsegmentation. They already know kind of what the concept of microsegmentation is, or the zero trust model. They understand how that fits together, and then being able to piece that into these new environments with a new technology or a new technical control. So I spend a lot of my time sort of trying to fit those pieces together. And I really enjoy working with my customers to try and fill those gaps that they might have. And then another callback to a slide that KJ had a little bit earlier that resonated with me was every customer is different. Every customer is looking at our elephant that's in the room from a different angle. And that's pretty relevant on this slide here, is there's a number of different things that may be, or a number of different challenges, sorry, that may be facing a customer within security, within cloud native environments. They may be very, very specifically looking for visibility and compliance, but at the same time, there's all of these other pieces on this slide here that are relevant to sort of every customer as a whole. So working with my customers to try and understand firstly what it is, what challenge they're looking at tackling, and then additional benefits by being able to implement security, especially with a tool like Prisma Cloud, across their entire environment. So, you know, they might be simply looking for a container-based security solution, but then if we expand it out, you know, the need to secure the hosts within a cloud environment is obviously critical as well. And leading into sort of the moral of today's story, so that, you know, our presentation itself is visibility, right? So as a security engineer, without at least understanding what is within these environments and understanding what is within my cloud architecture, I can't really secure it well without knowing what's there. And it's kind of this mantra that we've followed for many, many years. You know, the first time when we were talking to our business units about security, we were saying we need to implement visibility to be able to get an understanding and then start securing it from there. And I see these environments as being exactly the same. Is we need some form of visibility within them, then we can start layering security inside. And if we can do both at the same time, that's fantastic. You know, but within the crawl, walk, run analogy, I like to, you know, gain visibility and then start sort of picking off the areas that's most important to my customers. Now onto the actual slide itself. So I have 4 different pillars here within the slide. Now, roughly sort of each of the different components are very relevant to customers in different ways. So we have security, cloud security posture management on the left-hand side. We're talking about visibility and compliance and governance, obviously critical for our cloud environments. If we're moving infrastructure that has been traditionally stored within a data center to a cloud environment, if we're segmenting our applications into, you know, very, very specific things, like this container or this component does this one thing, how do we ensure that that the application is still compliant within this new design and architecture? Next, we'll talk about threat detection there. So obviously understanding what threats exist within these environments, making sure that rogue elements aren't being spun up and sort of finding ways around and attacking. And then also data security. If the environments themselves are changing, ensuring that the data security models that we have in place are still relevant after the changes happened. So these are definitely challenges for our security engineers and security resources that are working within an environment. And it's something that's close to my heart. So moving across into workload protection. So this is very interesting to me. So understanding how the host security and the posture of firstly, our virtual servers and our servers within the cloud itself, understanding the security of the containers that are living within those servers, and then also things like serverless security, where we're pushing out configuration via code or templates, and then ensuring that the security of that template is valid, right? So we're not running something that's unsecure in there or an older version, etc. And then finally, we're seeing like web app security and API security. So if we've segmented our applications into microservices, and then those microservices are communicating with each other, how do we ensure that that communication is still secure? And then communication into those environments is also secure. And that's where our web application security and also our API security comes into play. The next 2 pillars here is I have identity-based microsegmentation. So again, as a network security engineer at the start of my career, very, very interesting to me, ensuring that we still have segmentation within these environments. Just because we've moved it into the cloud does not make it instantly secure. And security engineers tend to be quite good about moving or segmenting devices into different use cases. And oftentimes compliance drives a lot of that, as ensuring that service A is not allowed to access service B, etc. So building up that identity-based microsegmentation, and especially in an environment like a container environment where the workloads can be quite ephemeral, the containers may be there for a very short period of time, or a rogue pod may appear and then disappear. So wanting to ensure that that segmentation is in place to protect against things like that. So that's obviously a key pillar for us. And then finally, identity access management for security. So ensuring that, you know, permissions still exist as IAM, people still have the correct access to the environments, and you know, administrator accounts and things, service accounts that are being used as well aren't sort of running off and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, so jump us onto the next slide. And here is where we're actually going to talk about how There we go. This is going to talk about how we're actually implementing security within new developer sort of lifecycle and developer processes. So on the left-hand side there, you can see security needs to come into play during the build phase of an application deployment. So applications are being built, they're being developed. Developers are trying to get these updates out as fast as they can because somebody like me wants to make sure that my background is blurred. So they're trying to get that in play, and we want to make sure that those updates that they're pushing are still secure. So we can do vulnerability management compliance checks within the CI/CD pipeline, which is the developer pipeline to push these changes into a live and production environment. So integrating with developers, ensuring that we're not standing in their way and preventing them from being able to do their job. But at the same time, as a security engineer, I'm responsible to make sure that the things that are being deployed are in fact secure. So once we've gone through the build phase, we then move into the deployment phase, and we start to see things along the line of looking at a container as it's being spun up and protecting it, ensuring that a container is not vulnerable in the long term, and then using things like runtime defense, cloud native firewalling, and access controls to ensure that that segment or the service that's being deployed has the right amount of access and is being effectively controlled. And then into the runtime deployment where ongoing protection for these services. Just because something is, passing all of its vulnerability checks today does not mean that it won't be vulnerable tomorrow, in that vulnerability might be found or identified and then sort of appear in the market. And then going forward, we need to be able to do that retrospective checks to make sure that, if something needs to be upgraded, we can do that effectively. So along the bottom there is just to reiterate what we were talking about before, where we're looking at, on the right-hand side, securing our hosts, securing our containers, and then securing our serverless deployments. So each of them come with their own different challenges. And as we were just talking about before, everybody's looking at the elephant in a different way. We've all deployed services in different ways, and we're utilizing different technology. And then the bottom left-hand corner, we're interested in visibility because I, as a security engineer, I need to be able to see something to be able to secure it. Automation and protection. And prevention. We want to automate to make sure that we can integrate into our developer tools. And then prevention is obviously pretty straightforward. We're looking at preventing attacks from happening before they start to run rampant within my environment. Now, so that's the end of my slide here. So I'm actually going to pass it over to Pim to run through a quick demo of the Prisma Cloud solution. So hopefully I haven't used up too much of your time, Pim.
No, you're good. Thanks a lot. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Yeah, so I think we might need a hand presenter over to him.
Yeah,
cool, awesome.
Perfect. So I have it here now, and I think before I get into the actual product demo, a lot of the things that KJ talked about, Anthony talked about, I think it could be summarized in this slide, right? Obviously, there's a lot of trend changes happening and a lot of new trends in terms of how applications are being built. But the kind of stack and the kind of workloads that they're leveraging. And, Prisma Cloud, as you can see from Anthony's slide, has really evolved to become, a really large platform that includes these different best-in-class capabilities. But it makes it so that it's really impossible to talk about any one thing. But as a platform, from a vision perspective, I think the one thing that I always want customers and people who are interested in cloud security to take away about Prisma Cloud is that really what we're trying to do is to be the underlying security platform that protects all of the layers of your cloud native applications, right? Whether, whatever stack that is, whether, whatever orchestrator you're using, whatever container runtime, whatever type of underlying compute, to address all of the layers of that application throughout that application's lifecycle, right? And we do this through essentially three different enforcement mechanisms. The first enforcement mechanism is API, and I'll touch on this, right, where we're actually connecting to your underlying cloud providers to pull in cloud metadata. The second enforcement point is by way of essentially agent, or what we call defenders, where we're actually deploying onto the applications, whether they're running on TKG or some other stack. Essentially, we're going to be agnostic to the stack. And then the last enforcement point being integrating across the tool chain, right, and getting integrated into the different tools that are leveraged across the CI/CD pipelines, right? Whether that's IDE tools, whether that's source code management tools, CI/CD, your registries, whatever you're using for deployments. So we're integrating across all of those technologies, trying to be the underlying or the underpinning security platform, right? That organizations can really leverage to build their DevSecOps programs and implement that framework. So let's get into the platform and what it is quickly. I know there's only about 15 minutes left, so I'll try to be quick and really sort of refer it back to this, right? So since we're talking about the modern application and we look at sort of, what are the different layers of the modern application, whether you're looking at the app, the container runtime, the orchestrator, the underlying compute, essentially we have those three different enforcement mechanisms, right? So I'll go in order in terms of, hey, what kind of visibility do we get across those enforcement mechanisms? But ultimately, one of the first things that organizations do when they adopt Prisma Cloud, depending on whether they're leveraging public cloud infrastructure or not leveraging public cloud infrastructure, I'd say, the common operating model now, or where organizations are moving to, is obviously public cloud infrastructure. But ultimately, all we're going to do is establish an API connection with your public cloud providers, whether it's AWS, Azure, GCP. And once we establish that API connection, we start to ingest different cloud metadata that gives us the ability to apply different controls and guardrails. But we ingest the first key piece of metadata is all of the different services and the assets that you're leveraging within those cloud environments. And let's take, for example, and in this case, I don't have a TKG environment, but hey, I could be running Kubernetes using one of the managed Kubernetes services from my cloud providers, right? And here, when I look at sort of this layer of the application, even within my EKS cluster, or any cluster for that matter, whether it's another cloud provider, there's sort of a component of that compute or of that layer that essentially lives in the cloud control plane, right? So when you spin up a cluster, hey, you get to define, how it is you want to configure it, what kind of node pools you want to, what your node pool configuration looks like, what security groups you want to attach to it, all of which are relevant to the security, right? In addition to pulling in the actual configuration for the resources and providing that visibility, I could drill down into one of these clusters and then understand the changes to that cluster, right? So understanding, still within the cloud control plane for this particular cluster, I understand when it was discovered versus, when something was added or when something was deleted or removed, and you get the who, what, where, when of this particular cluster. Obviously, within your public cloud infrastructure, there's going to be other supporting services. We mentioned security groups. You could be running sort of managed nodes, unmanaged nodes, but all of that visibility in terms of that cloud control plane and the infrastructure is here within this platform, right? When we look at the application and go a bit further and still keeping in mind sort of, we think about the modern application, hey, we're building it on public cloud infrastructure. We have to secure the control plane. So how do we actually secure our infrastructure and that control plane, right? Because we're ingesting all of the metadata and we have visibility into things like, hey, what are all of my policy violations? What kind of instances am I running within these cloud environments? What kind of traffic do I see within my flow logs, right? So that the traffic that's traversing the actual cloud fabric, where are these connections coming from? And I could drill into these data points. And it's easy to see here as I go into this, the cloud metadata gives us a lot of visibility into, different aspects in terms of what's happening within our cloud environment. So here, when I clicked into that data point within the widget, it's going to populate soon. I'm able to understand, it takes us to this forensic module. I won't get into it too much, but you can see here, it's executed a query, right? This is what we call RQL. Essentially, it allows us to ask questions about our cloud environment. In this case, all we're asking about this particular environment is, hey, look through all of my flow logs, show me where there's a public connection coming from a public source, that there is essentially traffic because the bytes are greater than 0, and it's going to this destination resource, right? So here you can see we have visibility on the actual flows that are going to the different components of infrastructure within the cloud service provider itself. I could understand, hey, the details of the traffic. I could look through whether those are suspicious. But it's not just the traffic and the network, right? When you look at sort of cloud native challenges, I think one of the biggest risks or one of the biggest attack surfaces is essentially misconfiguration of resources, inappropriate IAM configurations. And essentially, because we ingest the metadata, or because the platform ingests the metadata via those APIs, we are able to understand and identify those things. So, for example, hey, if I want to understand, am I actually using EKS or another form of Kubernetes? Maybe I'm looking for Azure Kubernetes services. Hey, if I want to see, show me all of my different AKS clusters, I could run this command. Essentially, all we're doing is we're leveraging the API, right? But then we could get very granular. So this is essentially how we apply controls, right? Because we've pulled in the entire configuration of any given resource, whether it be a cluster, whether it be a VM, whatever it is, we could then go through and step through that configuration and then condition on certain elements or any element essentially within the config, right? So maybe I only want to look for those ones where the name contains, let's go AZ Lab, right? So when I run that query, it returns back a result. So this is essentially how we apply security to our infrastructure. So you can see here, you're not expected to create those queries. I spent a bit of time just so you guys understand essentially the underlying policy framework and the policy logic, but we have different types of policies, right? So we could be looking at our network flow logs within our environment. And here we could determine, hey, is there, a publicly accessible DB port, right, or DB port that's open to the public. Hey, maybe I want to understand my entitlements and my permissions within my cloud environments, maybe understand, hey, who has access to a specific bucket, which is actually very difficult to do in the absence of a tool like this. Maybe I want to understand the content itself within my storage. Maybe I want to look at specifically configuration so I understand compliance, right? Or maybe I want to look at specific audit events and show me, hey, when are users actually manually creating resources through the console as opposed to using automation? So there's different use cases here, but from an infrastructure perspective, you can see we're essentially we're taking a 360-degree view, right? Based on all of the cloud metadata we're able to collect, we can essentially apply policies across these different facets of the cloud infrastructure. So going back to the modern application, right? I mean, the cloud control plane is very relevant. And if you think about it this way, right? If you had a compromised IAM account, let's say, a user that had a risky privilege, like they could do attach user policy. So essentially they could create, like they could take any policy, whether it's a managed inline policy, and attach it to themselves, essentially being able to escalate privileges. Whether or not you have whether or not that you've secured your environments, you've built the firewalls, you have a VM series in front at the perimeter, it actually doesn't matter, right? Because a compromised IAM account where you sort of have root level access to your AWS account, then it's over anyways. Because then I could just go into all of those machines. I could attach whatever security groups and everything else that I wanted, right? Essentially, you just get full control. So obviously, there's a lot of different challenges when you start to move to cloud, right? Like the attack surface isn't contained to just, let's say, a network anymore, right? So when we look at Kubernetes and all of its flavors, hey, in this case, I'm using the example of EKS, but we have an understanding visibility now of the cloud control plane, but we need visibility into the actual application, right? And going back to this architecture slide, here Prisma sort of transcends these different layers in the sense that, hey, we have visibility into your cloud environment and IaaS. We have visibility to the hosts. We have orchestrator level controls. We are protecting the container runtime, and ultimately we're protecting the underlying application, right? So what does that look like? If I come back into my environment and we go to the different clusters that I have onboarded here in this environment, whether it's something self-deployed, something in the cloud, EKS in this case, once we've deployed essentially these defenders, the third enforcement point, we get application level visibility, right? So Anthony mentioned, hey, we can build a compliance management program. We could build a vulnerability management program. We have visibility into the running components of our application. And this is, this is typical of the modern day application, right? Where it's built up, made up many microservices. But here I can see all of the namespaces within my cluster. I can see all of the different pods. And if I want to understand, hey, show me all of the vulnerabilities, and then how do I address those vulnerabilities? When I sort by vulnerability, I can see exactly all the different vulnerabilities, the different components that are impacted, whether it's a binary, a specific application component, whether it's OS level vulnerabilities, all the way to being able to view how those vulnerabilities and compliance issues are introduced within our environment, right? So here I can break down all of the different layers of a given image and show, for a given layer, which application vulnerabilities or which components have vulnerabilities based on the layers that have been used to build the image, essentially, right? So this is visibility. I think this is really the first step in terms of organizations understanding and implementing security. Obviously, now that we have visibility, there's different things we can do, whether we want to build, controls and do gating throughout our CI/CD pipeline. We're able to define different, thresholds, and we could get integrated into different tools. So in terms of those different tools, whether you're looking at, VS Code, this is an example of one where, hey, I could scan, I'm connected to a GitHub repo here. I could scan not only my CloudFormation templates to understand any infrastructure issues, I could scan my Kubernetes deployment manifests for, compliance issues or misconfigurations there or security issues. And I'm actually getting integrated into the tool set to be able to deliver that security intelligence back to our developers, back to our engineers. Again, it's about sort of bringing a platform that encourages collaboration, reduces friction, right, in terms of code deployments, and then embedding security more holistically into the application. So whether it's VS Code as an IDE, you can go to something like a Jenkins, and let me log in here, where I could go to my Jenkins and say, oh, second. All right, timed out. So here, being able to get integrated into native developer tooling and being able to say, hey, do we want to gate this build because there's a vulnerability, and being able to surface those here so that developers, engineers could address it, right? So there's different capabilities within the platform. Ultimately, we're trying to provide and provide visibility into all of the layers of the cloud native application across the lifecycle. And then providing security as well for all of those layers. So there's a lot of different security capabilities, whether it's runtime defense and being able to apply active controls all the way to the web application and API security. So there's a lot of different components, but I'm going to stop there to see if there's any questions. Other than that, I guess I'll turn it back over to, I don't know if KJ, you wanna wrap it up, or if, Anthony, you wanna wrap it up. But I think from a visibility perspective, that's what I would show here, right? So hopefully you guys can see, how we integrate across the different layers of the cloud native applications, and how we provide value to not just security teams, but really cross-functionally, right? So I mean, this tool set, a lot of times we see it being driven by not just security teams, but engineering teams and DevOps teams. So it really is a tool that's sort of spanning the different domains and teams that are involved in building these applications.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the we're talking about the Git repo and really looking at securing that as well, because I mean the whole idea of being able to go in from a more of a supply chain, or being able to compromise the container, but then having the organization push out the compromised container. That's actually, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think of that. But when you have these repositories and they are in a public space and they are accessible, there's a lot of value from that. But there's also inherent risk. And so, it's interesting to see that as part of the product. So it's been great. I was learning a lot about the product as well.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, thanks. And I'm showing this here, right? So I mean, we looked at some different mechanisms in terms of how we get integrated into the tool chain. Just another thing here where, hey, we can get sort of we could gate the PR process and the merge, right? So here, if I were to commit something and trigger a pull request, if it fails specific scans, whether it's related to infrastructure, whether it's related to vulnerabilities within specific packages, we're able to gate those kind of things as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I don't want to interrupt Anthony when he was on a roll, but he's talking about these four different pillars, and not only is it the security, the posture management, the workload protection, the network security, and the infrastructure entitlement management. It's also the fact that you're making changes more rapidly than you would in a monolithic infrastructure, and so I remember the days of, well, we got to wait for the next version of Oracle application so we can get those forms that we want available, and there's new functionality coming back. But we're only doing that every 18 months. And so now, I mean, the development cycle and how rapidly you want to get those solutions or those new features out to your customers, it just complicates things from a security perspective. And if you don't have these types of processes supported by good technologies in place, it's just an impossible ask of security. And so and also I really liked the second slide that Anthony showed, which was making sure that you're getting these security tools into the development pipeline earlier. Because again, if you're going to be able to address that from a rapid fashion, you have to provide something that your developers can consume in a way that they will consume it. To make sure that security isn't that sort of last gate it has to pass. Security is a number of gates, along the way, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree, and I mean, I think you touched on a good point, and I know KJ had the slide with portability, and we talk about Prisma as cloud native security. I think cloud native isn't just a buzzword within the platform, right? I think in a lot of cases those kind of terms do become buzzwords, but you talk about things like portability and manageability. We leverage cloud native architectures, right? So even from an agent perspective, it's not a legacy kernel based agent, it's Kubernetes native, right? You get auto scaling security, you get portability, even in terms of how we deploy. You could deploy web application and API security through this decentralized architecture, right? Or to your point about, hey, rapid deployments and ephemeral workloads, to be able to adapt the rule framework and the model to account for those rapid deployments, right? Obviously, defining static rules in rapidly changing environments. How do you define a static rule for a workload that's alive for only an hour and then goes away and then gets redeployed, right? So there's a lot of things we're doing there, that truly makes it cloud native. I think that's why we're the leader. But unfortunately, obviously, I mean, this isn't the forum to really go into those depths, but there's a lot of, from the cloud native side, I think there's definitely a reason why we're the market leader in security, for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, I really enjoyed the presentation. Thanks Anthony, and thanks him, right? I think
Yeah,
I got it wrong the first time. I apologize for
yeah.
that. And for the participants that are on the line here, you're going to be seeing a lot more about what Prisma Cloud offers. You're going to be seeing a lot more in the future about what VMware Tanzu offers. There's all sorts of services that plug into these environments. Everything that we had to do in the data center, all the compliancy, all the security, everything we had to do with the VM-based workloads, we have to do all of that with containers, and we have to do it at a more rapid pace. And if we're going to really drive value, we have to plug in earlier into the development cycle, and we have to give those tools and not make it a gate at the end that we check. It's got to be something we do along the way. So yeah, no, this was great. Really appreciate it. For the participants out there, reach out to your account managers, reach out internally. If you're with CDW, we love to have these conversations, and it's great to get people like Anthony in front of customers. I love to get in front of customers. Let's talk about what your business challenges are. But thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Have a good one.